right, folks, we're kind of gathering everybody together here, doing something a little different. I'm not going to do the presentation because I told you guys I was going to take you right into my Google Docs and we're going to look at some different emails here. As you guys gather in here, feel free to go ahead and start asking questions. If you have any about emails, I'll try to get to as many as possible. So it's better to kind of put them in early, especially if you have expectations, so I can kind of work through those in line with the presentation and the things I'm talking about. I already got some via email, so I'm going to hit those. Just as a quick kind of test, as everybody sort of gathers in here, go ahead and hit me up in chat or the question and answer section and let me know if you can hear me and you can see what's actually a Google Doc that says how to write emails that convert on the screen. Just give me some quick indications that my audio and video are working okay. All right, thank you, Sylvia. Everybody else? All right, thanks, Travis, perfect. All right, so we've got about 6 minutes. The seat count on my license, which I might need to update, is about 100, and we've got like 255 people signed up. So could be tight. So if you've got other people in your office or friends, tell them to jump in early. Thank you, Melvin. And again, while we're just kind of waiting here, feel free to start dropping some questions. This on the screen, like I said, I'm doing a little bit different. I'm not going to actually do PowerPoint presentation. I'm actually going to kind of sit you inside my Google Docs and I'm going to run through this in a document. And I'm going to give you guys this document at the end of the webinar. So you'll have the video and you'll also have the document to kind of refer back to it. It's got, as you can see down here, I've got some very specific examples. So I thought this might be a little bit better way to do this. So as you kind of look down what we're going to go over, I've got up here kind of the agenda. Feel free to drop in any questions that you might have about building email life cycles, writing subject lines, writing emails in general, maybe even how to use them. We're going to take you through a lot of different examples today. But if there's anything, or maybe even challenges you've had in doing email campaigns or drip emails, yes, Sylvia, you're definitely going to get. So you're going to get this document that you're seeing in front of you. And of course, you're going to get a link to the replay for being here. So you will definitely have all of this to refer back to. Subject lines, yes, definitely, Travis. It's the magic. So we're definitely going to cover subject lines and some different thoughts around that. I'll give you the magic potion right off the bat. The secret to subject lines are writing a bunch of them. So, but we'll talk a little bit more specifically about some things that work, some things that don't. I'm going to do a little housekeeping while we're doing this. I'm actually going to pause my camera here for a second. And like I said, do a little housekeeping. So I'll be right back. All right, guys, we are getting ready to start here in a second. Had to do a little housekeeping there. I should be back off mute. You should see my presentation in front of you, how to write emails that convert, and you should hear my audio okay. If you could, just drop me a line, let me know all that sounds good to you. As we get ready to get started, just sort of, if you've never been in one of my webinars, I like it to be interactive. So feel free to drop in questions right off the bat, and I will sort of try to move those questions in as it's relevant within the presentation. All right, excellent. Thank you guys. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Sue. Nice to see you here, Sue. John. Okay, great. All right, so again, a couple things that everybody always asks is, one, you will actually get this document at the end as a follow-up, and you will also get the replay video. So after this, I'll package all that up and you'll get all that. Still encourage you to take notes or things that are particularly relevant to you. I thought that I would do things a little bit different instead of the kind of the typical PowerPoint presentation. I'm actually going to run this straight out of Google Docs. Because one, it'll be easily packaged up for you, and two, as you can see down through my kind of outline here, I'm actually going to show you a lot of very specific examples of emails that that I've built or our team has built. Some of these aren't just my own, that are actual drip email campaigns. So we're going to get into some very specific examples of emails. And so if you have any challenges that you're working on with emails, or things that haven't worked, or questions that you have, or maybe even something that has worked, drop those into the chat or the Q&A section, and I will talk through those as we go through this. I already got some out of email, so if you email me some questions, I'm definitely going to hit those as we go through here. So let me power into this because there is quite a bit of content here. This on my screen right here is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to kind of start building that sequence by getting into your customer's head. This is probably the most important thing that you need to do to be really effective with emails, and probably the step that you're most likely missing. Then we're going to talk about actually building out sequences and life cycles. The worst thing that you can do really in any case when you're doing sales with email or you're doing marketing with email is just to write one email, because ultimately, just thinking about your own inbox, oftentimes you'll kind of ignore the first one or so, or you'll have the best of intentions and you'll file it away or save it, but really for the most part it's going to get lost in the mix. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to jump into the actual writing. This is what you were talking about, Travis. Subject lines, that's the kind of the key to the soul. That's your entry point. That's your opportunity to actually even get an at bat. So we're going to spend a lot of time about subject lines, and then we're going to get into kind of emails specifically, how to get replies, how to get the actual click-throughs that you're looking for. So that's kind of our outline. So let's jump right into it. So the first step is just kind of getting into your customer's head. So thinking about, where's your customer coming from? What are they thinking about? What do they need to hear from you? And really kind of my outline starts like this. So the first thing you need to think about is, where are the emails actually coming from? There's all kinds of different types of data that you are probably sending emails on. They could be people that you have just come in contact with, maybe from a show or a trade show, a conference or something like that. You've gathered maybe some business cards, maybe you've been to a networking event, you've been to an industry event, and then the more digital sort of approach. Maybe you've actually acquired them on your website. They've actually filled out and requested to subscribe to something that you have there. Maybe they've downloaded an ebook. Maybe you're actually acquiring the data or purchasing the data from a consumer data source. A lot of you, I know, are familiar with, because you followed me, you're familiar with aged leads, which essentially are internet leads that have kind of had some time since the customer first inquired. So there's a possibility that you're buying aged leads, or you're buying internet leads. And so all of those things are really important to just understand where they come from. And then the second step of that is potentially the process that they've been through. This is particularly important when you're talking about internet leads or age leads, really understanding where those people have been before and maybe how they've interacted with folks Yeah, MK, we are definitely going to share all the material here, so you'll definitely get a copy of that. Um, so just really understanding kind of the process they've been through, and then sort of what kind of needs to happen next in order to sort of make that connection or reconnect. So again, thinking about where they've actually come from. The first step, whenever I'm thinking through how I'm going to write my sequence, usually where they've come from or how I got that data is a fundamental sort of first step in segmenting the different email lists that I'm going to work through. The other kind of natural segmentation is potentially a product type that they were interested in. And so when I'm starting to think through how am I actually going to build this sequence, I think it's really important to acknowledge the process. So perfect example, if you're dealing with an aged lead, to say, hey, I know that a couple months ago you actually submitted an inquiry online, and maybe you didn't make a decision, right? So I'm really acknowledging, I'm giving them an indicator of where I got this information, why I have it, why it's okay that I have it, and just talking them through what they've already experienced, because that gives you instant credibility to know, oh, okay, this is why you're talking to me. This is how you got my information, and you're here to help. So really important to acknowledge that process and be transparent about where you got the data. Then the next thing is to really think about however they came into your funnel, however they came into your email list, whether that was acquired or you actually got them on your website or you actually purchased them. What were they trying to get when they came into the email list? If you're talking about an internet lead, they probably came on for, if you're insurance or mortgage, they probably came on just simply for a rate quote. So it's really important for you to kind of think through. And regardless, even if you're in a B2B setting, and I know there's some people from other industries here, regardless of what industry you're in, usually your customers want one of about four things from you. And this is what you need to kind of think through as you're building the email, right? They just want the facts. They don't want a lot of your explanation and your flowery talk and your industry speak. A lot of times we really make these emails way too long. We sort of over explain things. So they just want the facts. They want you to convince them that your process is going to be simple and easy and convenient for them. It's not going to take a lot of their time. They don't want to deal with salespeople. So sort of taking that salesy language and approach out of it is really critical. And you can kind of see how I do that when we go through some of the emails that I write and send out. And then ultimately, keep in mind, they want the result. They don't really want your product, right? So I come out of the mortgage industry, and one of the things we used to always say is nobody wants a mortgage, but they would love to have a home, right? And so you really have to think about that when you're approaching your thing. A lot of people don't want life insurance, of course, but they want their family taken care of if something horrible happens to them. So oftentimes when you're approaching this with email and your clients, you need to approach in a way that kind of represents the result or the outcome of dealing with you, not necessarily the product you're trying to sell. So get out of the position of kind of you, and think about them. So what's the next step? I kind of pulled this little quote down here. Hopefully you can see it. This is a tweet actually from Jason Fried. He runs Basecamp, which is a project management software. But I truly believe in this, and he really kind of captured it best, is most salespeople would be better served and better at sales if they study the buying process instead of the selling process. So we often consume all these books about like sales techniques and processes and those sorts of things. And to a great degree, they work if they fit into the buying process. And so I believe in focusing a lot of attention on the philosophy and the psychology and the sociology around the buying process and the consumer. And that's what this kind of next step mindset is the people on your list. What is the next step they need to take in order to buy? And so again, this gets back to where you got them and probably where they got left off. And again, we're going to give you some specific examples, but things like, potentially a whole bunch of people called them, but they didn't actually give them the quote they needed, or they called them and told them they weren't qualified. And maybe that happened a few months ago and something's changed. So, potentially understanding what the next step would be. And then as you write the email, your number one goal is to re-enter that buying journey. So somewhere along the line, They probably got dropped, or they decided not to make a decision, or it wasn't the right time for them. And so you need to take all that into consideration as you write that email to sort of reinsert yourself into the journey. Even if it's your own CRM, potentially you just said, hey, I made 3 or 4 calls. There's no response from this. It must be dead. Well, the more likely scenario is it just wasn't the right time, or maybe they filled out and tried to get quotes from a bunch of people, and the process just overwhelmed them, and so they needed just a little bit of time to maybe cool down. So again, all that takes into consideration of how I can potentially position myself to re-enter that buying journey. And then ultimately, our whole goal is to make them a customer, and you need to think about that customer's mindset and what they are thinking about would make a good partner for them. So what are they looking for in a vendor? What are they looking for in an insurance agent? What are they looking for in a loan officer? What are they looking for in a solar installer, right? So ultimately, again, just like what they want, how to make them a customer really boils down to 3 or 4 things. You should always lead with value first. Give them something, give them some information, give them some understanding about how the process works. You're ultimately building trust. Being authentic, using language and an approach that is super transparent is healthy. The 4th one is really important. Don't forget to sell, though. There should never be an email that goes out that doesn't really ask for the sale or ask for them to move forward in this process. Okay, again, keep piling in any questions that you have as we go through there. So that's the sort of 5-step process that I go through. And before I even put anything on paper, I'm thinking through all of those aspects so that I can position myself in that very first email to start to kind of weave myself into this fabric. Okay, so designing an email lifecycle. Ultimately, it begins with an outline. A lot of people will start like pounding out emails. I'm a firm believer in sort of outlining where I want to go, what my goals are, and my outline kind of usually looks something similar to this. So I'm saying, hey, what's the overall objective or the approach of that first email, and then so just a reminder for people that are entering a little bit late. Yes, they're definitely going to get a presentation and a replay of this at the end. So. Okay, so again, I'm building an outline. And so this is a pretty typical scenario here where I'm going to use 3 emails to sort of warm up my list, because a lot of times we're working against old or aged leads, or maybe even cold emails in the case of B2B. Got to be careful with cold emails in the B2C world. So my format framework that has always worked consistently is sort of a 3 email warm up, and then I switch into a content focused long-term nurturing, and then that email campaign goes literally infinitely, right? I'm going to continue to campaign against that particular person until they elect to opt out. The premise being that if I continue to add value, then they'll want to stay on the list, and as a result, I can continue to talk to them and be there and be present for the point in time where they actually are interested in what I'm selling. So this is an example of how I might outline my life cycle. So I'm going to say, hey, this is the very first one. Chances are they don't remember who I am, or maybe they don't know me at all. So I want to, the whole sort of approach to this and goal is just to introduce myself. I want to acknowledge, again, how I got the info. What I think you're looking for, I'm going to do my best shot. Another sort of technique here is to build a set of themes and sort of test those themes of what, your kind of hypothesis as to what most of these people in this customer segment are looking for. And then I'm going to tell you, of course, how I can help you, right? That's the sales part. Signature, you notice I emphasize that even as I get into the examples. So oftentimes people forget to put a full signature block in there, and it really decreases their ability to the opportunity to get that conversion, get that reply out of there. So a lot of times we'll build an email, we'll push them to a link, and we think, hey, we'll get the conversion there, or maybe we have a phone number in there. But a lot of times these emails get stored off and maybe they file them away. I'm going to show you a little bit of technique there. And they get pulled out when they kind of need insurance, right? So they get filed away, and it's super important to have good, accurate, consistent, persistent contact information. Your phone number should be in there, a link to your website should be in there, and redo your email. Even though it's sent from you, I always put my email address in there, just again, to make it super easy if they pull this out of the archive to be able to contact you. And then ultimately, I want for each one of my emails in this outline, I want to know what my goal is. So my first goal is to just simply get it open. On my second email, I'm generally trying to get some sort of reply. This helps a lot for deliverability and whitelisting you and getting you into kind of the main inbox. The third one, I'm trying to just keep connected. In this welcome series, this is usually independent of my actual long-term nurturing series. So if I get any reply to these first 3 emails, the rest of the sequence stops. And then I continue with a personal conversation. It's really critical that whatever email service provider or tool that you're using, it's really important to get that to stop if they reply to you at any point in the thing. So one, it makes sense, and 2, you can kind of pick up the discussion in a personal way. So that third one is really just to stay connected. And to get to that third one, it assumes that you have not actually replied to me in the first 2. So my goal really is to get them to file me away in their contacts. This works great for referrals. You'll be amazed at how many people don't actually reply to you or respond to you, but they kind of stick you in their email and their saved email or a folder. And then when someone says, hey, I need an insurance person, they're like, oh, I've got a guy, right? Because everybody wants to be influential with their friends and be savvy. And so they'll pull your email out and they'll forward it. And so I've seen that happen with these things. So that's kind of what I'm trying to position for in that third email. And then the fourth email is really my transition into my long-term nurturing. And then I'm going to get an email once a week after there. And at that point, I'm again switching over to a content forward approach. So there should be some piece of content or some piece of educational information in each and every one of those emails. And so again, it's less salesy. It's more just kind of educating you on a product, your industry, how you can be useful. Sometimes, like for instance, in the mortgage business, a lot of times I put information around improving your credit, because so often people got disqualified for credit, or how to do a better job saving up for a down payment, or how to manage your debt so that your debt to income ratio is better. So those kind of sort of periphery subject matter is really good from an educational standpoint. Okay, so that's the outline, the life cycle. Now let's get to subject lines, and you're going to see some subject lines specifically, but I'm going to go through just kind of my top 8. So as I had said, kind of with a little bit of a pre-chatter as people were kind of getting on to the call, really the secret ultimately to subject lines is just writing a whole bunch of them. Even for single emails, I will often, at a minimum, I'll write 3 different subject lines and sort of determine which one I'm going to use, or maybe 2 that I'm going to test. But generally, if you're really building out a campaign that you're going to use kind of forever, I'm probably going to write 10 or so subject lines before I settle on the one. And then I'm going to start looking at my open rates, and I'm going to probably go back and about once a month, I'm going to look into my campaigns. I'm going to tune all those and see if I can lift up that open rate, because without that subject line being effective, I don't even get an at-bat. I've got to get them to open. I've got to inspire them or interest them or make them curious enough to open that email. And so those subject lines are critical. So here's the kind of steps that I move through to be effective with subject lines. First and foremost, just write like a normal person. The way that you write a subject line when you're sending it to a friend or a family member or just a colleague or another team member in your company, that's the way you need to write your subject line. So what does that mean? A lot of times it's not perfect. It's oftentimes there's no punctuation in it. It's super short. And then the one thing that we probably miss when we write marketing email subject lines is it's just simply descriptive. It's very clear as to what you're going to get. This is particularly akin to, and again, a lot of these people that are getting the emails, they're working in corporate America, right? They get emails through their work. It should kind of look like that, right? So when you send an email to one of your team members at work, you're very descriptive of like, why do I need you to open this? Why do I need you to look at this? Why do I need this to be urgent right now? Maybe even tell you that it's urgent. And I'm going to be very descriptive as to what's inside of this email, because again, when I'm working with you, I need you to open that email and respond to it because I need something from you. This is really no different. So often when we're doing marketing, we get all flowery and we try to be clever and tricky, and it kind of works against us because, man, it stands out in the inbox like a sore thumb. Talked about this a little bit. Keep them short and simple. Again, less than 30 characters is kind of my rule of thumb here. But again, the longer it is, you're just going to kind of flag yourself as a blowhard, over flowery marketer, right? So keep them super short and simple. Sometimes I use one word. Sometimes you use a couple words. But again, it's super simple. So anywhere from 3 to 5 words. And again, you're going to see some of these. Sometimes for effect, I might get long, or I might do something different just to be kind of bizarre. Might use some funny case, all caps or something like that, or break some of the rules. Normally you don't want to do all caps, but again, depending where they are in my cycle and how familiar they are with me, sometimes I'll start to break some of these rules. So that's always a good thing to be aware of. Number 3, this is a biggie. 3 big mistakes that I see a lot of marketers and salespeople doing. Just trying to be too clever, too witty. Humor is hard. That's kind of another thing. Humor is super hard. So if you try to be funny, there's a good chance that you're going to fail at it unless it's just like part of your DNA. I'm not naturally kind of the jokester sort of personality, so I actually don't use humor a lot. So that's super important. My personality is a little more sort of personal and folksy, and so I will use some of that more sort of informal language because that's just who I am. So a lot of times, again, don't be clever, just sort of play into your natural personality. Don't oversell, don't make grandiose claims. It doesn't help. I can't tell you how many emails I get a month that have 10x this and 10x that, and so that just don't oversell, don't over promise performance and that sort of thing. And then really important, don't try to trick people, right? It might get you the open, but it's certainly going to disappoint and frustrate, maybe even make mad your audience when they get into that email and then they know that they've been tricked. So you're not going to get that conversion. So encourage you not to use that technique. So tricking somebody into open. One of the common techniques you see here is maybe a forward or a RE, try to make it look like it's a reply to another email. Those things are just, again, not great techniques, and people are just going to be frustrated when they open it and they know that they've been tricked. Nobody likes to be the fool. Don't forget the pre-header. This is a little piece of, as you kind of look in your email screen or preview window, there'll be who it came from. There's some techniques around that as well, but then you're also going to get sort of a little snippet of the email. If you leave that out, you don't put the pre-header into your email service, it will usually just kind of grab the first few characters of the email. And so you're kind of simulating that, but just kind of like in SEO where we like to handwrite our descriptions, even though Google will figure out how to put something in there. It's kind of the same thing with this. And so you can just sort of extend that subject line a little bit and maybe create a little bit of a teaser in that pre-header. So that's what I like to do here. Here's kind of a couple of the rules that, again, I generally say are rules, but from time to time I might bend them, right? So don't use camel case or title case where you're capitalizing the first letter of each word. Again, that stands out as a sort of a marketing person, right? So just write it like a regular sentence, maybe even write it all lowercase. The ways that you can break this rule sometimes is as maybe you're going to use all caps, again, super sparingly. And I would usually only use that deep into a campaign where I've already built some rapport and they know who I am. Don't use it as your first email. And then that kind of goes for number 6 too. Minimize punctuation. We don't need periods and exclamation points, just kind of let it drift off. You're probably going to be writing a sentence fragment anyway, so don't kind of overwhelm it with punctuation. If there's a comma in there or something, makes total sense to put that in. But in particular, exclamation points, 3 exclamation points, stuff like that, really a no-no, will stand out. Using things like weird characters like dollar signs and ats and stuff like that, again, probably are going to cause some red flags, either in the consumer or even in some of the spam filters. So I would encourage you to minimize punctuation. One thing that I do use, and again, you should never overuse any of these techniques, but sometimes I do the 3 dots, the ellipses, just to give them some indication that there's something else in there. Usually I use that when I'm making the subject line a little bit mysterious. So I've got one in here I think I used that just said curious. And then dot, right? So if I am trying to be a little bit clever, then I will sort of indicate that I'm not trying to trick them by using something like the ellipses. I said this right off the bat, write lots of them. The more of these subject lines that you write and you build, you'll just simply get better at them. And then ultimately test them. So whenever possible, sort of email, do that A/B testing. Most of the email service platforms allow you to A/B test some different things. If you can't, then start sending it for a while, get a baseline there, and then make one incremental change to that subject line. One little tip, if you are going to change the subject line for the purposes of testing, be careful not to kind of change anything inside of the email. So try to only test one thing at a time. All right, any questions as we're kind of going through here? No questions. All right, you guys are sending perfect email campaigns. By the way, like I work with a lot of teammates that do things slightly different, and so these are never kind of the only way to do things. There are a variety of ways that you can be successful, so I encourage you to try different things, to break the rules, try different techniques, write more emails, send more emails, and ultimately that's going to make you the kind of the best email marketer. Okay, so now let's get into, right before we get into our examples, we're going to take a look at some of these techniques live. Doing good on time. We're about halfway through here. All right, ever offer anything for free? Yes, definitely. We're going to offer things for free. Generally, it's kind of content free, but depending on sort of approaches and industries, Philip, that you're in. So if you're in insurance or mortgage, it's pretty typical to say, hey, I'll do if you're interested in refinancing your mortgage, I'll do a free mortgage review, which is super helpful, by the way, for the customer. Is just oftentimes a customer has a mortgage and they have no idea of what the sort of the characteristics of their mortgage is. They don't. Most people in America, if you ask them what the term of their mortgage is, particularly the interest rate of their mortgage, any sort of special sort of characteristics of it, they just don't know those things. They don't know if it's a 30 or 15. They don't know if it's an adjustable rate. They don't know if it's if it's at 3% or 5%. And so a lot of times, kind of offering that free mortgage review is a great hook. Insurance, man, this is how most of you guys probably get your business. You should be recommending that every 6 months or so that people are getting a review of their insurance for a lot of different reasons. You're actually going to see an email in here. I've got an insurance sequence, particularly, life changes, products change, in the world that we're living in right now. And hopefully you guys are all safe and healthy, and your family as well, as we go through this coronavirus that we're going through right now. But sometimes just simply the world changes, right? And this creates opportunities for you to kind of make sure everything's in order in case something were to happen. So that's a great sort of free offer hook for insurance. Free quotes. I mean, if you're in the home improvement or any of those kind of solar installer and stuff like that, free estimates, free quotes, free inspections, and those sorts of things. So a couple different ideas there. Hopefully that helps. Or should we be a couple of emails? Yeah, generally I don't lead with that, Joshua, because it feels very salesy to kind of lead with the free. You're going to kind of see how I open. And I probably open my email sequences a little different than most marketers. So we'll get to that in a second. Let me plow through this last little bit because there are some, again, sort of rules of the road that I like to do in this particular setup. So one, never write one email. And this is really, these kind of tips are probably the reasons why, if you've tried drip email campaigns in the past, you haven't been successful. So just as a little bit of a context here. So this first one is usually what kills most sequences, honestly. A lot of times people will go, and again, instead of outlining things and going through the process that I've talked to up to this point, they just start pounding out emails. And guess what happens when you just start pounding out emails? You end up writing one, you load it up into your email sequence thing, and you turn it on, and that's the only one you wrote. And you have the best of intentions of going in and filling in the rest of the sequences later, but guess what? You didn't write them, and you probably never will. So this is the most likely cause of an email drip campaign just dying, because you send one, and you're not going to update it. You didn't think about it. You didn't think about the process, and as a result, you just kind of sent off one. The other thing is, a lot of times people will send that first email and they're like, oh, I'll just remember to follow up with the people in my prospects and that sort of thing. And I don't need to create an automated sequence. And guess what? That's something you should just like completely get out of your sales process. You will never remember to follow up. You'll never, never, never remember to follow up. So you should always automate your follow-up. You should always build in a sequence and always automate it. You can certainly augment it if you do remember, but make sure that it's there, because you're going to get busy with the next deal or whatever, and you're going to leave that deal that you just got with only an email or only one contact, right? So never write just one email. Another reason to never just write one email is guess what? Even if you're talking about writing multiple emails within the sequence, that first email, I guarantee you that you write, the first email that I write in any sequence always sucks, right? I have to get into a flow. I have to kind of get into that particular situation, that particular industry, that particular product. And so I will optimize. And so usually the first in that welcome series, I'll probably write that email 4 or 5 times before I'm really happy with it. And then as I get into the flow, I get a little more comfortable with sort of the approach that I'm going. And then they flow a lot more seamlessly, and I don't have to rewrite as many. But I guarantee you the first email that you write in any sequence is definitely going to suck. And then writing several just makes you think, right? It just makes you think through the customer mindset. Second part, the reason kind of a lot of these fail is because we don't really think about what the next step is. We don't think about how the customer needs to buy. And you can see with my little illustration here that I like to kind of storyboard, like what are the steps to their buying process? And then how can I move them along that? So a lot of times if we're talking about personal finance sort of products or financial services products, part of their buying process is, hey, I'm going to gather some information. I'm probably going to compare some rate quotes. Super key, right? I got to get my spouse involved. I got to get sort of buy-in from that spouse. And then the next thing is I sort of have to understand how to compare the different offers that I've got. Then I have to get comfortable with someone in particular. Probably need to talk to them a little bit, have some questions. So being able to sort of understand what that buying process is, and then using the email to simulate it and to move it forward or to just support your sales process is key. Only one goal. Most times when people first start writing drip email campaigns, they will write these huge long emails because they're trying to get everything they want to say out in that email. They want to describe their products. They want to talk about the benefits. This is not a landing page, right? This is just a connection point and trying to get a reply or a response. You just simply, no one has the attention to read a wall of text, so don't do that. Some of you who are familiar with that, or maybe have gotten other, you're probably going to be shocked by what my emails look like. So there can only be one goal. Does anybody know what this super small? Let's see if I can make this bigger. Anybody know what movie this is from? You have to be as old as I am to know that. But when you're writing emails, remember there can only be one. Highlander, yes. All right. Love it. Okay, great movie. Okay, it was like my college. We watched that over and over again. Okay. So just like there can only be one goal, there should be only one call to action. And ideally, that call to action should be captured in a button. So it's going to go to a landing page, or it's going to go to the offer. So that one CTA. Don't put a bunch of buttons in there. Don't ask them to do a lot of things. And every email, only ask them to do one thing. That could be asking them to reply. That could be asking them to go to a landing page. That could ask them to to get started. Could ask them to check your rates, check your rate quote. But again, only one call to action in that email. And I sort of break that rule a little bit because I like to have sort of the main thing I want them to do, and that's usually my button. Maybe it's register for a webinar. And so when you saw the email from me, there was a big button that said register, right? That's the one thing I wanted you to do. But if you notice, I often will put a PS section. And this is sort of, if I don't get that primary call to action done, or maybe that's too high of a level of commitment for you as the customer, I like to give them either in the body of the email or maybe in a PS, something that's just a little bit lower barrier. Maybe it's checking out a blog post. Maybe it's telling them just to, and a lot of people don't feel confident in this, but I love to use this technique. Hey, just save this email for later. One of my favorite emails that I feel like worked really well, because I got a lot of people calling me like months later when I was in the mortgage business and working age leads, is just simply save this email because you'll need it later, or save this email because it has all of my contact information. So that's a pretty common one, linking off to a blog post. This is kind of creating a challenge of some sort. A lot of times people think everything's automation and there won't be any reply if you hit reply. And for most emails, that's a fact, right? You hit reply to most of these marketing emails and no one will ever contact you back, right? Or if you ask them, it just goes into the bit bucket and nobody ever responds. So creating a little bit of a challenge here. This is another favorite PS. Especially as you're kind of starting up the relationship, want to test if I'm a real person, hit reply and ask me anything, try it. And people will get clever and fun here in that they'll ask you like, how old are you? They'll ask you like, where are you from? So you'll get these, and that's great. And make sure you answer those questions, right? Unless it's something like crazy or personal or something like that, but sort of inspire them. So this is a cool little technique to play out here. Yeah, keep those questions going. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pull this up on the screen so you can kind of look at it. And I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I had in email, but you guys can start to kind of look through what my email examples look like. And that's how we're going to spend the rest of the time. So as you see these emails, ask questions about them, ask reasons why I do what I did in here. And so let me jump to a couple questions here. How can I make my emails engaging and entertaining so as not to be super boring? You're going to see language is everything. Again, take on the tone, a conversational tone. Think about how you would talk to somebody. The entertaining, I talked about being funny. That's a sort of a risky place unless you're just a jokester. I mean, if you're comfortable with that, that's your personality, then certainly let your humor show through. There is a little bit of a lack of tone whenever you have emails, and so sometimes people, I know a big part of my humor is just sarcasm, and that does not play well in the written language. And so you got to kind of be careful with being clever, being sarcastic, inside jokes, even just sort of pop culture. Some people get it, some people won't. I'm from Detroit. Everybody assumes I'm a Red Wings fan and starts to talk about hockey with me, but I'm a transplant. Like hockey doesn't, I don't understand how hockey works, right? And so you can kind of miss the mark sometimes if you're trying to use that as a confidence or trust builder. I come from Kentucky originally, and so I'm a basketball guy, right? And there's no basketball people in Michigan. Maybe University of Michigan and Michigan State's been all right lately, but like you really want to get me talking sports, let's talk about UK basketball, Kentucky basketball. So you got to be kind of careful with some of that nuanced stuff. So I try to just keep my language just informal and personal, and that's kind of what I use to try to be engaging and entertaining, actually. Careful with that jokey content. Okay, this is a little bit of a side topic, but I think it's okay to talk about a little bit. Can you take your opening emails and just copy and paste and stick those into LinkedIn? So LinkedIn is a great channel. My most effective marketing technique in LinkedIn is actually putting my content into the news feed itself and personally engaging with other people so that they start to know me and they sort of engage with my content. I don't send a lot of connection requests and emails in there. When I do, usually I've had some other interaction. I go find them and then I ask to connect, and then I actually put something in there about our personal interaction. And so this could be even a sales call. Like if I do a sales call and just talk to somebody for a few minutes, and maybe we're not even going to go forward, then I'll go ahead and connect with them in that capacity. But generally, I'm not a big fan of kind of the automated campaigns. I've even tried some of that and just haven't had great results with that. So I would definitely, at least at this stage in LinkedIn and the culture that's there, and kind of the blowback that we've had with some of these automated campaigns in LinkedIn, I probably wouldn't use InMail in that sort of campaigning that much. But if somebody does connect with you, that's another little trick. If somebody connects with you and you think they're interested and you're going to accept their connection, because you don't have to connect with anybody, they're just going to blow into your inbox anyway. I do actually, if I'm going to connect with somebody, I will write a personal info. I'll actually, one, look at them, see whether or not I want to be connected to them, and then I'll find something personal to try to start that connection. Because if there is something to be had there, then I want to start it in a personal way. And a lot of times, just by doing that, they'll start interacting with your content, and maybe there is something to be had there. Okay, last question that I got in the queue here. Again, feel free to ask more. Oh, okay. I love these two questions. How many emails and how far should they be apart in your follow-up? And then when should I give up on a prospect? This is my favorite question because I probably encounter to most. So first question, my framework has been for years and it still seems to work really well. That welcome series or that warm-up series starts on day 0. So obviously the first day that I send that first email, then I will follow up usually 2 to 3 days later, and then I'll follow up after that about 7 days later. And there's a reason for that because I'm trying to get them kind of in a little bit of a habit with me. So on day 10, I will send that third warm-up email, and then every 7 days thereafter, I will put them into my educational series. Some industries, I might vary this a little bit, and maybe I make it every 2 weeks. I would never go more than every 2 weeks between an email, because what happens when you go more than every 2 weeks, and this is why I like the frequency of once a week, even though to most people that sounds like crazy, too much email, is if you go longer than that, people will forget who you are and your unsubscribe rates will go up significantly. So you want to have consistency and frequency. You also don't want to skip a week, right? If you're on a weekly sort of process, you don't want to skip for 3 or 4 weeks, because the first time you send something on that 4th week, when you were sending every week, your unsubscribes will sort of be abnormally large for you, right? So I like that once a week. It doesn't, again, people are used to processing emails. They'll kind of stick you off to the side if they don't want to see it, but they want to stay subscribed. So people are good at managing their inboxes for the most part, and so you don't have to kind of worry about that. When do you give up on a prospect? Absolutely never. I leave that decision up to my customer. And so I will continue, and again, this is because I have a high degree of belief that one, my product is important to them, and at some point they will need it and they will need me. And then I also, because of the way I build email, I feel confident that I am giving them value and education with every single email. And therefore, there's no reason for me to take that away from them, right? And so if they choose to unsubscribe, that's awesome. In fact, I actually oftentimes create some emails in here that sort of encourages that or makes that easier to do as I get deeper into my campaign. I am very aggressive about cleaning my list. So I will go in there and look for, once a month, I will look for people who have not opened maybe my last 10 or 20 or whatever emails. That's really that's the filter I use if they haven't opened, because that usually gives me a couple indicators. Either one, they're just completely not interested in what I'm sending, and I don't want to be just kind of landing in their inbox with no opportunity to do anything with them, or more than likely that email has sort of, because they haven't opened and they haven't interacted with my particular email address, it's been moved off by these more intelligent inboxes, moved off to some sort of secondary promotions tab or something like that, like in Gmail. And I have no opportunity. So I might as well pull it out and help my deliverability, right? Because the more of my emails that get opened, and the higher percentage that are coming into Gmail or coming into Yahoo, the higher percentage that they get opened on my email, the better my deliverability will be. Oh, good question. Do you ever put videos in emails? Yes, as often as possible. In fact, the email for this registration, for this webinar, was supposed to have a video in it, and I forgot to put it in. The way I do that, just so you know, Jayla, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I actually take a screenshot of the video, usually from YouTube, which is where I host all my videos. And I will take a screenshot of that, and I will put that screenshot inside of the email as an image. And then I will link that image to my landing page if I'm that sophisticated, if I've got a landing page for whatever I'm signing up for, or the registration page, or I will just simply link to the YouTube video. And so when they click on that, they'll actually be moving to the video, and then they'll, of course, have to click on that. So kind of embedded video, there are some services that do that. It's not terribly perfect. This one single image seems to have better deliverability, and everybody kind of knows kind of how that works. But don't forget to make that image clickable, because everybody's going to click on the image, even if you put a little thing that says, hey, click on this, right? Oh, perfect. Excellent, Jayla. Once again, for everybody that's late, yes, you will get the content, and you will get the replay of the recording for registration. Okay, let's go through some emails for the next 15 or 20 minutes. So this is an example of a day zero email. This is an email that's sort of akin to what I would use if I'm doing internet leads or age leads. A couple different things. I'm going to acknowledge the process. I'm going to acknowledge kind of where they've been. So if you've ever submitted for an auto quote online, you know that a bunch of people get your requests and a bunch of people call you. And so this is one of the reasons I like age leads actually over internet leads, is because if you buy the real-time leads, one, they're more expensive. Two, everybody's like hitting them at the same time. You get overwhelmed. But if you wait, 30 days or so, this is a great way to kind of pick up the broken people along the way that really needed something but just couldn't sort of endure the process. And the way I like to open it up is one of two ways, because again, I don't know exactly their situation, but I want to re-enter the journey where I think they are. So one subject line I might test is, did you get your car insurance, right? And I'm comfortable with them saying, yes, I already got taken care of, right? Because I know then I'm going to take that reply and I'm going to move them straight off to my long-term nurturing, right? Because I want to win their business eventually. But I know they're taken care of. And I know, especially in the insurance business, this all will vary a little bit depending on your sales process and what you know about your industry. But in the insurance world, as all my insurance folks know, there's always a better rate, right? And there's some things that you can do to make a better rate. Maybe you bundle some things. Maybe you kind of have slightly different coverage. There's always a way to kind of get to a better rate, right? So this is a great opening line. Did you get it? Did you get what you're looking for? And then the second one that I like in here is, there's always a better rate. It's a true statement. And often people, people always shop in insurance. So usually they're very receptive to this. They're willing to okay, prove that there's a better rate. So this usually helps to get an open, at least start a conversation. Just checking in. Again, I love using both in sales and in email marketing. I love using assumptive kind of language. So I start as if we've already talked, right? I don't introduce myself in this particular context. Again, this is in response to like an age lead. I don't introduce myself, right? I want the assumption to be that we've already talked. And again, some people are comfortable with that, some people aren't. If you want to introduce yourself, that's great. I found this to be working. Just checking in to see if you got the new auto policy you were looking for. If not, I'd be happy to assist. I don't beg for the sale. I don't over explain. I don't give my unique value proposition. Like, that's not the moment for this. I'm just trying to get you open this email and be comfortable enough to sort of like hang out with me and not unsubscribe. Always a full signature block I show in this. Usually we're using some personalization or some tags and auto tagging in here, but I want a full content block. I don't want to overflower this. I don't want to put images in there. I don't want to put all my certifications and crap in there. Just super simple. What's my name? What's my phone number? What's my email address? And then a link to my landing page or my home page, just so they can, again, toss this around. And then I love using PS. A lot of times people will go straight to this. Some of your best converting copy will actually be in that PS, because people's eyes, for whatever reason, just jump down there. Go ahead and save this email for the future. I want to be your insurance guy. Sell, like, tell them, like, be transparent. This is what I want. I want to be your person that you go to for mortgages. I want to be your person that you go to for insurance. I want to be your person that installs your solar panels. I want to be the person that does, whatever. I want to be your main vendor for this, industrial cleaning, whatever. So there's a whole variety. Also, just out of interest, if you guys can put in what you sell into the questions and answers, I might try to use some of those examples and kind of pepper those in as we get them. News article regarding your product should be in the first email or after. Yeah, I never lead with myself, Calvert. So I'm gonna, something like that is gonna be in my content series. So that's gonna be in my long-term nurturing. I'm gonna leave that down there. Final insurance, okay, life insurance. Yeah, these are great. You're in spots that just are open for people to always sort of be interested in what you're selling. So I love the insurance, because unlike mortgages, you could do like 6 insurance transactions a year as an individual consumer, whereas mortgage, it's like once every 3 to 5 years, right? So yeah, personal lines is great. Great. Commercial. Yeah, there's great things you can do with commercial too. Hitting small businesses, niching down into, and just hitting kind of a whole, hitting every hair salon on the block, or going over and hitting all the schools and that kind of stuff. So commercial's a great place for email, because you can grab those. Emails. You can usually harvest them from a variety of different sources, even if you're doing it manually and cheap. And you can just hit that. So whenever I'm doing commercial insurance, I'm thinking of like a niche. Got one here in rural Michigan. They hit all the farmers, right? And they do a great farm insurance business. I don't know the technical term for that, but okay. Let's dive into day 2. So now I've sent my kind of intro email. Let's just start a conversation sort of thing. Let me make sure that I'm in your inbox and you're not going to kind of spam me off. And then I'm going to say something, hey, I really want to be your insurance guy. So this one's usually a little more salesy, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm looking for. I know you recently requested it online, so again, acknowledging the process. There's a little bit of a format here, telling them, just ask me a question, lowering sort of the friction, right? Just ask me a question, ask me anything. Okay, so that's day 2. Day 3. So this is a kind of, again, keep in mind, if you've given me any reply, you're not going to get this email, right? This email only means that you've ignored my first 2, and I'm on my 3rd one. So this is kind of what we in the email space call the Dear John letter, or the goodbye email. And this is really giving you an opportunity to sort of feel like you're off the hook, right? I'm going to stop selling to you. And I think that's really important, because it will, again, keep them subscribed. And as you get to do the valuable content, they'll sort of stay engaged with you. So just simple subject line, like, I'm here when you need me, file this away for a rainy day. Again, I'm trying to get myself in their contact database, get them to save this email. I do a couple techniques in here, because I am hoping that they actually save the email. And if you use Gmail, you probably go through and search for old emails. And I did this specifically, right? So this little technique, I want to be your go-to insurance person when the moment happens. Archive me off and search for, and actually give them a search query, right? Because it sticks in their brain, right? And what do people do when they're looking for somebody? They're like, oh, who's your insurance guy? my insurance guy is. So this will sort of stick in their brain subconsciously, and the next time they need insurance, they're going to go, oh, I got that email, and they're going to search for insurance guy, or they're going to search for insurance, and because I put this in here, it's going to pop up, right? So that's a little technique. Okay. Email or call me with your questions. I'll be your top priority. So, right, or you'll be my top priority. So super important to again, be personal, know that, hey, you're important to me. Okay, let's look through a couple more. Okay, so now I'm going into this is going into the nurturing sequence. And this, Calvert, was kind of to your question. This is how I start to do my nurturing. And there's a couple different ways. This was actually written by a team member of mine. Again, there's different philosophies. I like to sort of tell them a couple things and then link off to a blog post or link off to some content so I can kind of measure the click-through on it. His premise, and he kind of uses a slightly different technique, is he believes in kind of giving them everything in here and just get them to open up every time because they know they're going to kind of get the full story. And so he generally doesn't link off. He just makes it very easy to consume and super short. So even though this is longer than all those intro emails, the actual information in here is super short. So you can just glance through this, you can read it on your phone real quick, but he believes in kind of getting everything in the email and not forcing you to kind of click off for the next thing. So the big techniques here, sort of triggering things that kind of create some interest is, oh, what are the secrets, right? This insider language, you know, that most insurance providers won't tell you. And then the real technique is kind of the 3 bullet points. Whenever you can use 3 bullet points or use bullet points, it makes it really easy to scan. Sometimes I'll just highlight, you know, good credit, pay in full, know what your car is worth, you know, stuff like that. Sort of bullet, even I might bold these, just so again they can scan them easier. So maybe if I was gonna, you know, maybe do something like this. So again, they really kind of focus in on the key ones. And then again, I love to use this hit reply, call me, you know, again, any questions. One of my favorite call to action is ask me anything, because again, some people will be funny, but you get a reply and it increases your deliverability. You can actually not respond in a negative way. So some people like try to kind of like, you know, poke at you or get you like flared up by saying, hey, you know, by being funny, ask me anything, you know, it's like, what's your favorite color or something like that. Then I'll just go back. Now I can be funny, right? And I can go back and get that conversation started. And you'll be amazed how many people are kind of caught off guard that you reply, and you get to have a productive conversation after that. Again, 7 days later, I'm kind of doing that again. You can see how he's highlighted his call to action in here, telling you something you might not know or getting you curious. Trying to drive, again, most of the industries that I work against are professional services of some sort. So they're financial services, financial planners, insurance, mortgage. So that sort of consultative approach is what you're driving. Is like, I'm your expert, and there's a reason that you should consult with me. Buyer beware, again, trying to tell you something you don't know. Again, you're going to get this, so you'll be able to look through this. You can see where I use the personalization here. I don't try to over-personalize. That's super important. Usually when you over-personalize emails and you try to use all those fancy tags in there, you'll screw it up, and then you'll end up with something that just says, you know, hey, and it'll look just like this, right? You'll send out an email that looks like this because you don't have a first name, right? There's usually techniques in most of these email things where you can put, you know, if you don't have this, then do this. So you can do something like this. So if it doesn't have a first name for whatever reason, that record, it'll just say hi there, right? And so that's kind of a technique. So don't try to over personalize it. Most people don't pay attention to any of that stuff. And usually when you over personalize, you start to make mistakes or errors, and the email starts to read automated and really quirky. So don't try to get too clever there. Okay, so now I want to show you that there are other types of emails. So if you're not just in insurance, you can use these same techniques. Here's one. These are actual emails that I'm using now for instant home offer client. And so you can kind of see here in this particular case, what they do is they reach out to people and offer to buy their home for cash. And so again, these are actually emails that are written after they try to make that, so they've generated a lead, they're trying to make a phone call and get in contact, maybe some emails, and these are their aged leads, so things that are just sitting in their database. So I use the same technique, even if it's coming out of your CRM, that it's just been sitting there forever, and I'm trying to warm this conversation back up. This is kind of an interesting one. They actually changed their name, so this is where I kind of try to use maybe a little bit of humor sometimes, is just to say, hey, we just changed our name from this, and then in order to make that like feel more personal, I say, what do you think? What do you think of the new name, right? So that's where you can kind of use some humor that's not necessarily nuanced or would be lost. But again, just a little bit folksy, a little bit just kind of, hey, I'm a regular person like you. Here's my day 3 email. Again, this is where I kind of use that curious, what did you decide? Again, letting them know that it's okay if you made a decision, just let me know. And that's super helpful to you, because then you can change the way you're talking to them. If they say, hey, I already sold my house, then I'm going to database them and put them into a long-term nurture campaign, right? If they said, oh, I already got the life insurance policy I was looking for, or I got the questions answered that I needed, then again, move them straight into your long-term nurture and try to win them back on that next deal. Professional services, let's jump to that. Again, I try to kind of generalize this to anything, right? And you can see how the techniques work. This is something that I use in my agency all the time. I like to share case studies. Hey, I just finished this, thought you'd be interested. And maybe I'm going to share a case study or a link to a project that we've done. This works good if you're in industrial manufacturing. Hey, we just finished this, or we just had this client that needed this thing, and here's an example of what they did, and here's the great outcomes. Again, this is a great way to do that. Again, you can push them off to the page, or you can just kind of tell them the high points of that case study in here with maybe a bulleted list. My day 3 might look like something like this. What do you think? Are you doing this, right? Kind of, again, sort of pushing them, challenging them. Are you doing anything like this currently? Love to walk you through the process, how it might help your business. Trying to work towards the appointment. If you use something like Calendly, I encourage that. I don't usually try to drive people into it. I try to say, hey, let's schedule something and let them sort of free flow into an appointment. But I always put that Calendly link in my PS, because a lot of times people just like that convenience. And if they're familiar with it, then they'll go ahead and do that. I don't make it my primary call to action to get an appointment, because a lot of times people are confused by that, or frustrated, or it doesn't work, or something like that. And so I let the first call to action be just, hey, let's just set up a time. You tell me, and I'll try to move my calendar around to accommodate that new sale. Okay, we did exactly an hour. Hopefully I gave you guys lots of stuff. Hopefully everybody got their questions in, because I can't actually go over on this particular one because I have another meeting starting right now. But any last minute questions that I can do in the next 1 minute? Hey, Scott. Oh, good to see you here. That's awesome. You are more than welcome, my friend. Andre, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Yes. One last time for anybody that missed it, I'm going to email you this specific document. You're more than welcome to steal anything in here. And I'm going to also send you a link to the replay so you can watch it again if you're so inclined. Hey, Sue, good to see you here. Hopefully your colleague joined us as well and had fun in here. We're going to do this more frequently. Who knows? I may try to do it once a week. I love doing this. I love teaching. If you, because you're on the email list, or you got an email from me, or you will get one as a follow-up, feel free to reply to those emails, or email me directly at bill.rice@kaleidoco.com. Happy to hear anything you'd like to know about sales and marketing specifically. Thanks for the endorsement, Steve. I appreciate it. We're actually going to be doing some with you very shortly, so that's exciting. All right, guys, I'm going to blitz out of here and get to my next appointment. Again, thank you so much for being on here, and hopefully I've given you guys some value. And hey, when you use this stuff, let me know how it works. All right, everyone, take care, and we'll see you on the next webinar.